the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Saturday, August 23rd. It's my final day in Lisbon, at least for this trip. Next time you see me, I will be somewhere in Italy. Exactly where I can do my show from, I'm not sure, but I'm flying to Naples tomorrow. If I can get a show off, if I can do a show sometime while I'm in Naples, I'll do that. Otherwise, I'll be broadcasting from Florence, one of my favorite places on planet Earth. So, within I don't know, 200 meters, I think, from Michelangelo's David. I'm literally down the road, block and a half away from Michelangelo's David. So I'm gonna have a lot of fun in Florence. All right, let's get rolling. Today is Ask Me Anything, and we've got our panel lined up. And wait a minute, we've got an echo. Killed the echo. Echo's gone. So let's jump in with our panel. Of course, you guys who are not on the panel can still use the super chat to ask questions and participate. So feel free to do so. And let's start with Holden.
Sure. So, I watched a few videos of you on talking about taxes,
Yep.
and one of the things that have done quite a bit of research about is tax incidence theory. So, I kind of wanted to challenge you a little bit on tariffs. Um,
Okay.
so you seem to have kind of a view that I want to make sure like I don't like misrepresent you or something.
Yep.
But you kind of have a view that okay, sometimes it gets passed on to consumers, but obviously the demand schedule it will determine that you can only sell a certain quantity, and then sometimes it reduces net income for the firms that the tariffs are being imposed upon for their inputs or whatever.
Yep.
Is that kind of where you're at?
Yeah, I think over time, it almost all gets passed to consumers. Because firms can't afford to reduce their net income significantly because they become less competitive with firms that are not importing, so they have to pass it on. They're less competitive for capital. Yeah, so it's basically shared between the company that imports it and it could be a variety of different companies importing it because it could be part of a supply chain and consumers at the end, but most of it goes to consumers. Yes.
So the thing I would say about that is like, um, if if I'm a firm, then I sell this good or whatever, I have a profit maximizing price that I could sell given a demand schedule. You see what I'm saying? So
Sure.
like, if I raise the price, then I get lower net income, and if I lower the price, I get lower net income. So if you put a tariff on my inputs, the cost to produce it will increase. And of
Yep.
course, we know cost of production theory is false. So if I try and raise the price, then my net income goes down. If I lower the price, my net income my net income goes down. So basically, no matter what the firm does, the uh, the uh, the net income goes down. Now that's assuming that they set their price already at the profit maximizing level, which obviously is not always the case. But no matter what, there is a profit maximizing price for
But
whatever it
you're
is that you're selling.
but you're
So
ignoring the behavior of its competitors, and it depends, of course, on how competitive the industry is. But we know, for example, that as soon as a tariff on steel was set, U.S. manufacturers of steel all raised their prices. Not because they were importing steel, but because they could, because they knew their competition now was going to raise their price. And indeed, that's exactly what happens. So what happens is, because it's a competitive market, as soon as you've placed a constraint on the importer, on the price setter, because they're the more efficient producer, the domestic industry takes advantage of that, raises prices, and as a consequence, the importer can also raise prices and pass that on. So it passes it on doubly, both in the tax on the imported material, but also on the fact that domestic firms don't face competition or less competition, and therefore can raise prices themselves.
So you're
And you know,
saying,
like, empirically, this was shown. Like when Trump raised tariffs on washing machines, which he did in his first term, the increase in prices of washing machines to consumers, it was well documented that it went up by a certain dollar amount.
yeah, but the thing is that the empirical observations could have a bunch of different factors here. So that doesn't necessarily disprove what I'm saying. So like if washing machine prices go up, that could be because marginal firms exit the industry whenever the tax is placed. So the supply curve would shift left and the equilibrium price would rise. But that doesn't
Sure,
mean that they're passing on the cost.
sure, but the point is that the consequence of the tariffs ultimately is passed on to consumers. Whether it's passed on to consumers by the fact that some marginal firms leave, and therefore that shifts the supply curve, or whether it's
Yeah.
because they now have more room to raise prices, uh, uh, because competition, because they know again, the price setter, which is the importer, is now forced to their net income is gone down, so they're incentivized to raise prices. One way or the other, it's the consumers that are going to face higher prices.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that it's being passed through, though. It means that there's now a different price given the different supply and demand dynamics caused by the tax. So, like, I think the thing is like we can't just say it's passed through to consumers because it's not passed through. But they do pay higher prices, but it's not because we just increased the cost of production, so now we could just pass this on. You see what I'm saying? So
Sure,
you're
but
running a
but but the reality is that one way or the other, consumers are paying a higher price because of the
Sure.
tariffs.
Yeah, no.
But add to that the fact that a lot of the stuff we import from China is stuff that you don't have U.S. competitors for. So let's say we're importing toys, right? Toys and furniture, which are not made in the U.S. There's no U.S. competitor for those. Then the importer is going to raise his price and yes, that's going to shift demand. So he's going to face lower demand, but he is going to demand a higher price on what he does actually sell.
Yes,
And he'll get lower revenue, but he's not going to sacrifice his return on investment, investment in terms of his what he bought the stuff from China with, right? He is going to raise the prices, going to pass it through to consumers,
but
and he
ultimately the net
faces no
income.
competition. So there's nobody to compete him down because
So you're
everybody
saying
is facing the same increase in cost.
you have a toy and you have a producer of toys in the United States
No,
that
there is no producer of toys in the United States. All producers of toys are in China. All
okay,
producers of
all
toys,
producers of toy
all
and then you're
producers
saying
of toys face a 50% tariff.
okay, so you're okay, got it. So you're saying that toys are an input or like what are you saying? Like there's no
No, I'm
like you're saying
saying I'm saying I'm a store in the United States that sells
uh,
toys, and I
okay,
buy
got it.
those toys from
Okay.
China.
Yeah.
And now those toys cost me
Okay.
50% more than they did before. And there's no
Yes.
there's no US producer of toys that I can switch to. Then I
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
raise prices and accept
I got
the
you.
demand will
But
come down.
yeah, exactly. But the incidence is on your net income. You're on. If I you're the incidence of the if I try and pass on the cost, then I have lower net income. So yes, consumers are worse off because
Yeah, but then I
land and
buy
labor.
less, right? So I buy less product and I sell less product. I know that, but I'm not giving up my return on capital, my return on investment on the imports, right? So
But
I'm spending $100 to buy imports. Now I can only buy five things instead of before I could buy 10, right? Before I could buy
uh,
10, now I could buy five. I only have $100 to spend on imports. So I'm going to buy five and I'm going to sell those five at a higher price.
yeah, but the return on capital is lower now because of
Yes, the
the
return on,
tariff.
yeah, look, businesses are screwed. I agree with you. But
Yes.
prices that consumers face is higher.
Yes, but that's not because it's passed through. You're
Of
on
course, it's
the
passed
net.
through.
No, it's not.
The reason I'm raising my price is because of the tariff.
You're on the tariff, but the thing is that that demand schedule was there before the tariff, so I could have raised my price before the incidence on I
But
those
but I
consumers
couldn't
are
have.
willing to
I
already
didn't
pay.
want to because it's not because raising the price is not revenue
Yeah,
maximizing. It's not profit maximizing.
right,
Right. So, but
right.
now I'm going to raise the price because now raising the price is profit maximizing.
Yeah, but yeah, I agree. So
Yeah.
now the price has
So that's a
risen,
pass through. That's exact.
but
So
that's
if I
not,
raise corporate taxes, put aside
yeah,
tariffs. If I raise corporate taxes in the United States right now, are what? I don't know, 20%.
21%.
Yeah, 21%. If I double them to 42%, will prices go up?
Yes, but not
Yes.
because they're passed through.
Well, of course it is because they're passed through. That's
No, they're
exact.
not.
That's the cause. What is the cause of the prices going up? What's the
The cause
cause?
of the prices going up is because of lower production. You
What
have
is the
less
cause of
production
lower production?
because it's less profitable to invest.
What's the
The
cause
capital
of the
goods are
fact that it's less
depreciating
profitable to invest?
because of the tax.
Yeah, so the tax are the ultimate cause of the fact that the prices went up. I agree with you on all the intermediate steps, but the primary cause of all these steps have occurring is the tax went up, and a tariff is just a corporate tax in this sense. It's the same thing.
You're on. We don't agree. We don't disagree that the price is rising. We obviously are both there. The thing is, I'm saying like it's not just that it's passed on. It's that there's a change in what's being produced,
I
and the
agree with
incidence
you.
is on the net income.
I agree
So
with all
now
of that.
consumers pay higher prices. We agree. Consumers pay higher
What
prices.
is the
Consumers are
cause of
worse off.
consumers? But I'm asking what the cause of consumers, and we'll end it here. But I'm asking what the
Sure.
cause, the ultimate cause of consumer paying higher prices is what?
The tax.
That's it. That's all I'm saying. I'm not talking about the mechanism. The mechanism by which it's passed through is the complex mechanism that you described. That is, you've got a change in production and a change in demand in the supply curve that result in a change of prices. But the cause of all that, the thing that spurs all that, the thing that generates all that is the tax. And therefore the
We
taxes cause the price increase.
we're with the entire time I'm with you, but we'll talk about this more later. All
So
right.
it's all a question of it's all a question about what does pass through mean. And all I mean by pass through is caused by. I'm not saying
Okay.
it's literally passable. It's caused
Yeah.
by. That's all.
Okay, sure. I can get behind that, right? I
That's
can get
all.
behind
Yeah.
that.
Okay,
Okay.
good. Good. Amlan.
I don't know how to follow that. Uh, Great discussion. So mine is a much more lighthearted, a silly kind of thing. So I was at a funeral recently, and there was people there that were dressed very casually, like shorts and t-shirt kind of casual. And I guess my question would be is like there was a part of me that was bothered by it, but then there was another part of me that was asking like objectively, why am I bothered by this? Like the family, I mean, if the family has a concern, they could say, okay, here's a dress code. Obviously in the workplace, the employer can set a dress code. But is it is it rational to be kind of like, okay, like this seems off to me, or is it just that I show my age here, or what's the
I think it's rational because I think that what you wear reflects some element of respect towards the event or towards the
yeah,
situation that you're in.
yeah.
How you present yourself. If you come all ruffled and everything, and sweaty from the gym to a formal event, it's just not right. You're not showing the kind of respect that the event deserves, or that a workplace deserves, and so on.
Yeah.
Now, what are the boundaries of that? Obviously, have to do somewhat with convention. There's nothing I can, give you in terms of, etiquette is a question of particular cultural norms at a particular point in
Yeah.
time. We
Yeah.
don't wear three-piece or seven-piece suits anymore
Yeah.
for just everyday occurrences. But yeah, something like a funeral or a wedding, unless it's a hippie wedding at the beach or something. Um, it doesn't have to be a hippie wedding. A beach
Yeah.
wedding would require different attire than a formal wedding now. What are the rules? How do we define them? I don't know. I think it's incumbent upon the person putting on the event to give people guidance, because otherwise
Yeah.
it can be confusing, particularly today. But yeah, there is a certain reflection of respect that comes across from what you wear.
Right. So on a related then, like a few years ago, I work, I was in a startup and I was looking to hire or interview somebody. A very small company. We had a very casual dress code. I mean, I would go to work, in shorts and a collar shirt kind of thing. But this young guy, he came in IT job, and he came in like very somewhat scruffy looking, like shorts and a t-shirt. And again, within our dress code, but and I didn't let it kind of influence my decision, but I was kind of like, well, my feeling was, hey, you could have put a little bit of effort into putting on something a little bit more appropriate for an interview. But again, I was wondering after, like, okay, is this boomer talking here or what?
No,
Kind
I
of.
mean, at the end of the day, a lot of companies would not would eliminate him based on the fact that he didn't show any effort in doing
Yeah,
that. So it's kind of shows a lack of thoughtfulness or not caring if you
yeah,
got the job or not, because I think that even if you don't care, suddenly lots of other people in the marketplace do care, and
right,
he's suggesting he doesn't give a shit.
right,
I don't,
right,
and I think so that says something about him.
yeah,
Maybe some people would view it as positive rather than negative. But it's
yeah,
definitely, what you wear in circumstances like that is definitely saying something about your
yeah.
attitude.
Yeah,
Uh,
that was kind of my feeling too. And I was always taught, like it's always better to be dressed more than less
well, it
because
depends on the circumstances.
on
Again,
the
if
circumstance. Yeah,
yeah,
within reason.
yes.
Like, you don't, as you say, you don't go to
If you
maybe a
care about a
lighthearted
job, then
interview.
you'd rather overdress than underdress for a
Yeah,
job.
yeah,
If it's a social occasion, you might not care and underdress. So it really depends on the context. But
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, dressing says something.
yeah,
It might not be the deciding factor, but it definitely says something.
right. Okay,
Yaron, given
good.
how much you hate ties, would you wear a tie to a funeral?
No, and unless they said it was required. I mean, why would a tie? I mean, that's the point. I don't consider a tie um, adding anything, right? If I wear a jacket and a nice shirt, a button-down shirt, and nice slacks, I mean, that to me that's just as formal as a tie. A tie is just
Yeah.
an accessory that's strangling me.
Yeah.
Do you think it's kind of silly when the sportscasters all wear suits and ties,
Yeah, I mean,
like
I think they need to
ESPN?
wear something nice on television, but yeah, I don't think they need to wear a tie. But I don't like ties, and ties are more. I mean, there's an aesthetic to it. I get it. It creates some symmetry. To the extent that aesthetics and beauty are related to symmetry, a tie does create a certain nice, symmetrical thing. But I think you can create that other ways. Um, so I get why people wear it. It's just I find it, I find it constraining, and it's also kind of a remnant of 100 years ago where um, wearing something around your neck was really important. I mean, fashion changes all the time. The funniest thing is, I find is you watch TV shows about, I don't know, the West, or like they'll be in Nevada or they'll be in Texas, and they're wearing three-piece suits and ties, or they'll be like it's Brazil in the 19th century and everybody's walking around Rio de Janeiro in a suit and tie and everything. And like I would be drenched. It
Yeah.
would be so horrible for me and for everybody else around me, because I would literally be dripping sweat if I was in Rio de Janeiro with a three-piece suit. So
And especially when you tie that to 18th century hygiene.
yes. Oh yeah. Oh my God. Oh yeah.
But I
But
guess everybody stank, so it probably didn't
yeah.
matter.
Yeah, I guess they didn't smell it because
Yeah.
it was just the standard smell. But it's more than that. It's just I would literally be dripping water all over the place, because I do anyway. I'm right now. I am wet
Yeah.
because the air conditioning's not working in this Lisbon office because it's the weekend and it's humid, and that's just me. So put me now in a suit and tie, and God, I'd be dying. So, and somehow, I remember walking in New York City on a summer day, many times with a suit and tie on and
Yeah,
just being miserable, just being hot and sweaty and miserable.
yeah.
And what's the point?
So
So
yeah, thanks,
yes, there's a
thanks.
there's a time and place for everything.
Yeah,
It's also what does it mean to show a little bit of show respect? That doesn't necessarily mean you have to wear a jacket or a tie. It just means you have to be cleaned up and look nice. And the same is true of a job interview. It doesn't mean you have to follow the particular standard dress that Wall Street dictated, I don't know, 50 years ago. But you have to show that you put a little bit of effort and a
yeah,
little bit of care into it. That's all.
yeah, yeah. That's okay. So yeah. I feel validated. Thanks.
Sure. All right, Jennifer.
This sort of, this conversation sort of relates to something I was thinking about the other day when you talked about showing respect with different things. Like with language, for example, it's similar type of thing. Like I had to ask an engineer at work for some information. He had just come back from vacation and I was waiting on something. And I thought what I need is a certain thing. So I could have written, when are you going to have this for me? I need this.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, you don't say it like that. That's rude, right?
Yep.
And I'm
Yep.
not sure why it's rude. So instead, I said something like, hi, I hope you had a good time on your vacation. When do you think you might have this information for me? Maybe later this week?
Yeah.
Question mark.
Um,
I'm asking for the same thing, but yeah, I was like, what's exactly the difference? I'm
but
still
it's
asking for something.
it's completely a cultural norm. If you were working in Israel, you would write him an email saying, when am I going to get this?
Oh,
I mean,
me too.
hi,
Yes.
how was your vacation? You would just, I mean, Israelis are super direct, and now I don't do that. I write nice, polite emails because this is the culture I'm in, and generally I'm a little bit more, I don't know, cultured than most Israelis. But most Israelis, my friends, who've been very successful in the U.S. One of the reasons they've been successful in the U.S. is they bring that Israeli kind of let's just get stuff done. Forget about all this small talk and this schmoozing and being polite. When am I going to have it? And once you get used to that, it becomes fine, right? So it's really an issue of convention. Like in the world in which we live today, if you'd written the guy, the engineer, hey, when am I going to get this? He would have been insulted. But if he got to know you and realized, oh, that's how she always talks, and she's really nice and she's not trying to offend me in any way, then he would accept it. So it's very contextual, and it's contextual to the relationship and to what people know about each other. And in American society and most, I think, European societies, although not all, you expect it to be less direct. And
I,
and
I would I would just offer one other aspect on that though, which is I think there's an escalation aspect too. That if most of the time you have a good relationship and things are getting done and stuff, you don't need to be as direct, but occasionally, and when people get to know you and they say, oh, okay, he's getting a little bit short here, or he's getting a little bit
yep,
direct, without having to like really ramp it up, to that next level after, you can get people's attention and it still comes across as, okay,
sure.
you're not being an asshole, you're getting it done, but like,
Sure, but again, I think it's what expectation you set. So if I'm direct from day one, and this is just my style, and it's not reflecting me being pissed off or anything like that, I just want to know where the stuff is. I'm not, everything Jennifer said, but I skipped that. Hi, how's your vacation? And when, I'm just
yeah,
interested. Then people learn that that's who you are and that's how you communicate, and fine, and they don't escalate. But if you're usually polite and then suddenly you're very direct, then people notice the change and they wonder what's going on. But again, in Israeli culture is a direct culture, and therefore nobody raises an eyebrow when you say, "Hey, where is it?" They just go, "Yeah,
yeah.
I'll have it to you tomorrow," or whatever. They don't get excited by that, and they don't escalate it. Now, I think that's how it functions in Israel. I might be wrong, but
So it's okay. I mean, it's okay. It's a personal taste, though, what you like, right? Like, remember I told you I work with that guy in Brazil, and he's a real sweetheart. He always
Yeah.
says, "Oh, no
Yeah.
problem," and I'll get that done for
Yeah.
you. And I like that. I enjoy that
Yeah.
interaction. That's
Yeah.
okay, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
personal
So
preference.
it's completely personal preference and the culture of the organization and the relationship you have with different people as established by past communication. So if you switch suddenly, if suddenly you're behaving differently than you have in the past, then people think, oh, what happened? Why is she talking to me differently now?
Yeah, the only time I really hate it is when people have one approach with people who work for them and another approach with people they work for.
Yes, I think that's,
That really gets my goat.
yeah,
Because it's
yeah,
like, okay, you're an asshole with the people who work for you, but with everybody else, you're sucking up
yeah,
to them.
exactly.
Who are you really?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
But
usually they're
that's,
an asshole.
yeah, and that's bad. So you got to
Yeah,
be consistent. And it's wrong if you're one way with some people and another way with other
yeah,
people. You know, just if you're a manager, come in and set expectations. And if you're the direct type, then tell people, look, guys, I'm direct. I'm just going to ask you for stuff. I'm just not, I don't spend a lot of time on politeness and chit chat and stuff. Don't take it personally. I'm with like this with everybody, including my bosses. This is how it's going to be, and don't read anything into it. Then I think you set a certain expectation, and people will get used to it. But you're right. If you're inconsistent, there's a real challenge.
yeah.
Thank you, Yaron.
Yep. Thanks, Jennifer. Adam.
I have a very different kind of question for you. Can you hear me?
Yep. Yep. I can hear you.
You mentioned once that you are on the board of the condo you live in.
I was. I no longer am.
Okay. I'm on the board of the condo I'm in, and we're down to 2 members because our finance guy, who was a former IRS tax agent, decided to completely retire and leave the board.
Yep.
And now we're down to 2. And I know that if I quit also, which I don't intend to do, but if only one person is left on the board, then the Secretary of State in California takes over and charges a fee for running your condo.
Yep.
How were you persuaded to join the board when you were on it, and how can I persuade other people to join the board?
I mean, I was persuaded by the fact that I thought that board decisions had an impact on me. I have a pretty big investment in this condo building because I own a condo there. A lot of my net worth is tied up in this condo, and therefore I have a very selfish interest to help make sure that decisions that are made there are not against my interests. And and there are boards at condos make a lot of different decisions, and they really do affect the value of your condo. They affect the quality of your life. They affect a lot of things. So I wanted to be involved because I was worried that otherwise my interests would not be represented. And I think that's the way to convince people. They've got a massive investment here, and decisions are being made. It doesn't take up a huge amount of time, but somebody needs to do it.
I know that somebody needs to do it, and we Jews have a saying, if not I, then who? But
Well, but the question is, nobody's going to represent your interest unless you're on the board.
that's right.
That would be what I
That's
would
right.
convince people. That would be my line to try to convince people.
Now, is there a specific reason why you were not elected again, or decided to step down, or
They changed the whole board changed. The chairman of the board changed, and they changed the whole board, and they elected a whole new board. And I wasn't in the country when it happened, and I didn't care that much because um, some of the issues, at least that I was concerned about, were resolved. But yeah, no reason. If I was asked or if there was an opportunity to join the board again, I would probably do it.
um, okay, I guess that's the best argument. Um,
Yep.
but somehow most people that I meet are not really convinced that that it's in their interest if they already have a board that does a good job. And
Well, I mean, all you can do is try to argue that it's in their self-interest. You can't do more than that. I don't think there's a better argument than that. And of course, there is the risk that the state of California takes it over. So they should want at least one more board member just in case something happens to them and they have to leave the board. So the building, everybody in the building should have an interest that one more person join. And the way to guarantee that is for one of them to volunteer and to do it. So again, it's self-interest.
yes, and that has to be front and center. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Andrew.
Hey, Yaron.
Hey.
Can you explain the hatred of Israel in terms of anti-Semitism versus egalitarianism, or if you think that they're coming from the same place?
Well, I mean, I don't think they're necessarily coming from the same place, but there's certainly, I mean, it's a big topic, but there's certainly there's anti-Semitism in global culture. I think that emanates primarily from originally from Christianity. That is its source, but has been transported to all over the world, from the Middle East all the way to China. There is this general suspicion of Jews and successful Jews, although anti-Semitism also exists when Jews are not successful. That is, you find anti-Semitism against poor, unsuccessful Jews in Middle Ages Europe, so or pre-Enlightenment Europe. So there is a general background of anti-Semitism, and then add to that, which I think impacts the right mostly, but also is a background to the left. And then add to that the element of Israel and Jews more broadly being successful, wealthy, which drives, and the enemy of Israel being weak and poor and suffering and now supposedly starving. That all adds to the hatred. So it's a mixture of just a straight anti-Semitism. You can see that with Tucker. You can see that with Fuentes and others. As Jews as the way to explain all the bad things in the world without having to, I don't know, actually confront the actual issues that cause the bad things in the world. And a mixture of that with this kind of egalitarianism, this idea that if you are successful and if you are strong, you must have sinned, which is prevalent primarily on the left.
Do you think the right also?
But of course, there's also on the right
suffers?
because of Christianity.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
But it's primarily on the left. It comes from intersectionality, and egalitarianism generally is much more of an ideology of the left. The right is offended by the fact that Jews are higher in the hierarchy. They believe in hierarchies, right? They believe in, and they're offended by the fact that Jews are higher on the hierarchy when they should be, put in their place, given given their rejection of Christ and all of that. So,
thank you.
yep. Robert.
Yeah, first of all, real quick, because I mentioned on the show yesterday on a super chat that our interview with Agustina Vergara said it was going to be postponed. Turns out it's not. She's feeling up to it, and that is going to happen tomorrow, 6 p.m. If anybody's not already subscribed, just look up my name on YouTube and
There you
meet
go.
us there tomorrow at 6 p.m. And the only thing that came to mind for me was I was listening to Holden talk, and I thought, this reminds me of an objection, and let me know what you think of this. When conservatives would say that costs are passed on to consumers, it sounded like a way to say, well, let me explain. Left-leaning hosts, people like Tom Hartman,
Yep.
people like that would say, when taxes are raised, the only problem with that is that costs are passed on to the consumers, and we don't want to hurt consumers. We want to hurt the businessman.
Yep.
And then when I would hear right-leaning, Rush Limbaugh types say the same thing, I thought, well, costs are passed on to the consumers in the way that you suggest. It makes businesses have to do that. But kind of, maybe it's the verbiage. Maybe I'm thinking the way, well, Holden's giving a more sophisticated version of it. It sounds like we're saying, well, businesses aren't hurt at all by this, but the
That's not what
consumer.
I'm saying.
Well, no, I mean, Holden's making the point that they are hurt by it.
Well, I make that
right.
point too. I mean, I think his objection might be the same as
But
mine.
economically, he's saying, just from the
Yeah.
pure economics of it, then they are hurt by it.
Exactly, which is why I kind of agree that the phrase passed on to consumers makes it sound frictionless, like there's no harm to the business.
Exactly.
It's all on the consumers. And it's not
It's the net
frictionless.
income.
Businesses, and you can take an extreme example of, imagine a 75% tariff, 100%. It sounds ridiculous, like a bad example, but Trump is doing that. And you can say, well, 100% tariff, nobody will buy the stuff anymore. But the business isn't hurt because the one that he can still sell, he can jack it up 1,000%. He can't. Businesses are hurt when costs are passed on to the consumer. They're not all paid by the consumer. The business is hurt too. And
Well, but they might not be. Okay, so I mean, if you really want to get into the weeds of the economics, I mean, here's an example. I think I covered it yesterday. Amazon is in a position to basically not pass the cost on, if you will, not to change its pricing, to keep the pricing the way it is, to take a hit on net income in the short run, drive competitors
all
out
of
of
their
business,
competition out of business.
right? Drive the competitors out of business very quickly, because this is an exogenous shock that is produced by the government. And long term, Amazon might be better off. It's not an issue of the world is worse off. Some people are better off. Some people will this American steel industry, certainly in the short run, is better off, to the extent that there is such a thing as better off in terms of, and this is why they lobby for it. They lobby for it because they think they're better off. So it's who is better off, who is worse off. We're all worse off in the sense that, we don't live in a free market, and we don't have the right level of competition. But it's the reality is that prices go up for consumers. Some businesses will go out of business, and I keep saying that on my show, right? Small businesses will go out of business because they can't handle the extra tariff. They can't compete. They can't handle it. Other businesses will expand their market share. Different things will happen to different businesses. Overall, to the extent we can measure overall, we're worse off. But I think the main reason we're talking about pass it on to consumers with tariffs in particular, but this is corporate taxes as well. The main reason I say that is because the alternative to that's presented by the Trump administration is the company in China will pay for it, right? So who cares about companies in China? Screw them, right? Well, we should care about them because, but that's the attitude. The attitude is screw them. American companies don't hurt, and American consumers don't hurt, but that's just untrue. It's the price, is reflected in prices in the United States, whether you want to call it passed on or not.
All right.
And the business suffers, and the consumer suffers, and the Chinese company suffers too. I mean, that's the other thing about tariffs and taxes broadly. They're lose, 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 lose. Maybe at the margin there's somebody who wins, but generally they're lose, lose, lose.
All right. I think, like Holden, I agree with everything that you were saying. It's just the semantics of suggesting a frictionless business isn't hurt at all, only the consumer.
No,
But
no. I don't think that's true.
okay.
And
Yeah,
again,
even
they're
and even
winners
the
and losers.
businesses.
Even within business, they're winners and losers. They're all
Yeah.
businesses that will win.
And I've got to think that on principle, the businesses that are winners in the long run are going to pay for that too. Because
because we're
it's
all
not
poorer.
practical.
We're all poorer. They face less competition. They will ultimately become, because they face less competition, lazy and inefficient. And we will consume fewer of their products, and we could go on and on and on. But so yes, but again, in the short run, the effect is that they gain market share. And this is the reality of regulations. This is the reality of taxes. And this is the other thing. When corporate taxes are raised, the idea is that what is a corporation, right? Corporation, who is paying the taxes? You could say, okay, it's the shareholders. But the reality is that shareholders pay very little of the tax, that the tax is mostly paid by consumers and employees. I mean, study after study after study shows this, that what happens when corporate taxes are raised is wages go down and prices go up, and the return on capital doesn't change that much. So the investors are not hurt that much, and the same the other way around. When corporate taxes are lowered, as they were by Trump the first time, one of the few good things he's done, what really happened, and if you saw the result, was less a massive increase in the stock market and a return to investors, and much more wages went up and prices went down. And you can see this. You can see this as the ultimate effect, where how that is passed on. Holden's right; it's not passed on directly, but that is the ultimate effect. The ultimate effect is a change to wages, and a change to prices, and capital. The return on capital changes very little. The shareholders do not bear the burden, because they are not going to invest unless the required rate of return is satisfied. So if again you're changing the cost throughout the economy, then the shareholders are not going to bear the burden of this. Shareholders bear a very small portion of the burden and the benefit, depending on which direction you're going. All right, to be continued, I guess.
Yes, thank you.
Stephen.
Hi. Oh, okay. Hi, Yaron. I wanted to say that when we were at Ocon, am I speaking right? Okay. When we were at Ocon, Alma Deutscher gave a concert all around the biggest cities in Japan, and I couldn't go because I was going to Ocon.
Yep.
I would have gone to Japan for it. And she wrote an original piece of music, fantasy on themes of Japanese music, that you shouldn't miss if you get a chance to see it on YouTube.
Okay, I'll check it out.
Terrific. And
you're breaking up a little, Stephen. I don't know if it's the.
And also she did an improvisation that was so much better than she did when she was a child. I'm on my cell phone. I had to switch to my cell phone because my
that's better now. Whatever it is, it's better
Windows
now.
10.
It's better now.
And it's probably not as good. Is that better now?
That's better now.
Better.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the microphone's was being probably blocked a bit.
Okay.
I'll hold it. An improvisation that was so much more better than she used to do when she was a child that people remember. And it was, it was a big hit among the Japanese. And I guess
that's great.
Japan is a great for music. And what I wanted to bring that forward to is would it be possible for her to perform at Ocon sometime? Would that be something that would work, especially if I paid?
I mean, I'm not the person to ask, but I don't see why not.
Yeah, yeah, I would think that would be a big hit at Ocon. Just like the
you should check. Yeah, you should approach Tal or Tal about that and see what he thinks.
Yeah, I can do that at the next door in New Orleans.
Yep,
that would probably
work.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Thanks, Stephen.
That's it then, I guess. Unless you have some more comments on it.
No, I mean, I think that's fabulous. I mean, she's obviously an amazing musician, and it's great to see a romantic like her thriving in this world. And yeah, the Japanese have a real appreciation for classical music, which is great.
Yeah, I'd like to ever do something like that in the United States, but it hasn't happened. Tour in the United States like that, but it hasn't happened.
It's much harder. Right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Stephen. John.
Yeah, Yaron, thanks for all you do. My question, millions and millions of books have been sold, yet relatively few numbers of people show up on, YBS or ARI. And in talking to people, I find that one of the most interesting things is how many people have read and are influenced by the novels and the nonfiction literature. But is this: the people who have become celebrities and acknowledge the influence of Ayn Rand, I don't believe are connected in any way to ARI. And I would, one of the interesting things is the first question is to ask people is, when did you read it and how did it affect you? And if prominent celebrities, I made the list, the Jimmy Wales, the Mark Rubens, the Paul Ryans, it doesn't have to be, full commitment to the integrated philosophy. It just needs to be, and here's this, I'll come to the end of the statement. It doesn't need to be full commitment in any way. It's just the fascination and the excitement of these ideas. And I believe so why hasn't ARI, why hasn't YBS reached out to celebrities to try to bring them in just to share what happened, what caused you to read the book in the first place, and how did it influence you?
So how do you know we haven't reached out to them?
I don't know, because I don't know.
There isn't a prominent person on planet Earth who we know has read Ayn Rand that has not been reached out to.
And what's the response?
Usually none, no response at all.
And why?
Why? Because they don't want to be associated with the philosophy, their ideology. So they make the statement. They were influenced by Ayn Rand, but they do not. As soon as they respond to the Ayn Rand Institute or something like that, they feel like they now are sanctioning the institute and are now in one way or another affiliated with the broader philosophy, and they don't want that.
Yeah, and I could understand that. And I think that the easy statement of you don't have to.
Yeah, I mean, we've tried it all. Okay.
Thank you.
I mean, and I've met with a lot of those people. And I've met with a lot of them. So a lot of them will take a meeting, but you can't get them to more than that. Will they make a statement about it and that it appears in an ARI publication? No, because then they're associated with themselves with ARI. Will they come to Ocon and say something? No, because that, again, the same thing. So they don't want to sanction the full philosophy. They think it'll hurt them, and so they stay away from it. So but yeah, we have lists, long lists of all the people who have said stuff that is positive about Ayn Rand, and we approach every single one of them.
Okay, just to follow up on it, what is it then? Yeah, the affiliation will hurt. So how do we overcome that fear of affiliation?
I don't know that there's a way to overcome it. I mean, the reality is we have to wait for there to be celebrities that are not afraid of the affiliation because they're not afraid of the philosophy. They're not afraid of being associated with the philosophy. So, there will come a time as we soften this culture up around Ayn Rand that they will be quite happy to be associated with us and won't be fearful of it.
Okay, thank you.
I can't compromise the Institute's position in order to attract celebrities, which is what I think the Atlas Society to some extent does, right? I think they are willing to compromise their position and say things like, well, Ayn Rand wasn't really anti-religious, religion and objectivism. We can all get along under a big, nice blue, tent, so please come along. And then people feel more free to associate with them. I can't do that because it's not true.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Ian.
Hey, Yaron, do you want a positive or a negative?
You'll get an opportunity to do one of each.
Okay, let's do the negative first then. So this John Bolton thing, I heard your thoughts about it, and my initial thought was actually less condemnative of Trump, even though you know how much I despise Trump. And the reason is because they had to go through a judge, and I generally respect the courts. And so my initial thought was, okay, well, we should see how it plays out, see what comes out.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I think it's just an interesting commentary that it is where we are, that everybody raises the question, is this a real thing, or is this him just going after people? That's like under Biden, that happened, but only on like the fairly extreme right and the Trumpist right? No rational person was thinking the documents case was anything but a real case. Whereas in
No,
this,
but the case in New
most
York
people are
clearly,
like,
but the case in
yeah,
New
there were
York
cases.
clearly
Yes.
was, I mean, the district attorney of New York basically ran a campaign saying, I'm going to go after Trump if I get elected, so.
Yeah, I mean, there were obvious ones of things
Yeah.
he was actually guilty of, but they were clearly brought because he was Trump.
And this is the thing. We live in a world in which almost all of us are guilty of something. It's just the reality of a heavily regulated, heavily controlled, lots of laws world. And then a lot of what district attorneys do is they decide who to bring charges against and who not to bring charges against. And, that can easily and is, I think, and always has been politicized. It's Giuliani in the Southern District of New York in the early 1980s, going after Wall Street because it was politically the thing to do. It was the way to get attention and to get himself politically forward. And I think almost all attorney generals. I mean, I like the series Billionaire. I don't know if you ever saw the series Billionaire. Not because of the way it portrayed the hedge fund guy, because I think it didn't understand hedge funds at all, and was very distortive. But it presented the district attorney of the Southern District of New York brilliantly in terms of the kind of pressures that are placed on him and how political that all is and how infused it is with corruption. But yeah, we become a cynical culture, and we become a culture. And with Trump, he basically says it right in his press conference yesterday. He kind of said, I might have had something to do with going after Bolton. I might not have had something to do with going after Bolton. Like he wouldn't commit. He likes to play it because he realizes that has power, even ambiguity, because he wants his enemies to be afraid of him. He's just like any other authoritarian thug. He wants them to know he can come after them.
Yeah. The whole thing is so corrosive.
Yep, it's horrible. All right, let's see. I think we've got Jacob.
Hey, Aaron, I have two questions, but I'll have to leave after this one. So the question is, the more I think of the economy and where it's going, so for reference, my bonus for this year was cut by like 60% or more, but just because of numbers are coming in flat. I wanted to see your opinion for stagflation economy, which I think is what we're roughly getting into, is where you would pivot your career if you would. So for me, I'm trying to focus on the next 3 to 5 years of getting my technical expertise as a process engineer. That way I can be more dangerous in whatever field I go to. And then also, besides career, would you pivot your investment in any way? So right now I'm like 65% US S&P 500, about 25% international, and about 10% where I can just play with in the market. And it's, if I lose it, it's fine. If I don't lose it, it's all fine. Would you change any of your investment if you were 29, 30 years old in this market?
I mean, it's very difficult to say. I mean, it's not a cop out. I mean, I think it's just a reality. I think we're heading towards stagnation. How much inflation in terms of prices going up again? I don't know how much we're going to get. It's definitely not zero. The Fed wants it to be at 2%. I don't think it'll be at 2%. I think it'll be higher. The M2 numbers are increasing after a period where they were decreasing, which suggests to me that we're seeing monetary inflation, which ultimately will be reflected in prices. Stagflation, but I don't think we'll get the stagflation of the 1970s where you had, I forget, double-digit inflation, double-digit, price increases, and at the same time, just no economic growth. I don't know that I don't think we're gonna get to double digits. So prices will be increasing at a higher rate than any of us like, and that is a challenge. It's the stagnation that is the bigger problem, particularly if you're invested in the stock market. Holden might disagree with me in a minute, but companies can deal with inflation, right? They deal with inflation they deal with monetary inflation by raising prices. It hurts them, and it hurts them certainly in the long run. And the stock market stagnates, but the stock market typically doesn't crash because of inflation. The stock market crashes because of real damage to credit. Credit crises are what leads to stock market crashes. And we could get something like that. I mean, I've mentioned the fact that I think Bitcoin, these weird structures where what do they call them? Treasury companies, where they're just buying Bitcoin and then their valuations are double the value of the Bitcoin. That suggests to me that we're in a period that there's going to be a significant down move in those stocks that could easily spill into other technology stocks and other stocks, and you could see a real retraction in the stock market. But that's so hard to tell. I mean, it's also, if you're going to invest in foreign companies like international stocks, what are you saying about the dollar? Do you think the value of the dollar is going to go down, going to go up? Why is it going to go down? Why is it going to go up? It's not, it's complicated. Now, generally, if you tilt your portfolio towards more international stocks, what are you tilted towards? Are you tilting it towards emerging markets? Are you tilting it towards Europe? I think Europe is a mess. The euro might be doing pretty good against the dollar, but the European Union as an economy is the mess. And I don't know what valuations are like of stocks in Europe. I haven't looked at them. Emerging markets, there might be opportunities there, like the money you're playing with, put it in Argentina.
Yeah, my emerging markets was just more of a hedge if the U.S. slows down. I could get some exposure
to. If the U.S. slows down, so will emerging markets.
True. What about for career? So I was planning to jump companies, but then the market slowed down dramatically. So everything's hyper competitive. So I was thinking of next 3 to 5 years, stay with my current company, develop some advanced skills, and then maybe relook at it later. Don't know if you have any feedback on that.
I mean, I think that probably makes sense. Although if you don't like your job, or You can always start looking and seeing what's available out there. What is the market like? But what you want to do right now is really develop advanced skills, not so much just because the economy is in such flux, but also because AI is coming, and AI is going to restructure a lot of the way jobs are done and kind of the skill sets that people are looking for. And I think it's worth really thinking about how to kind of think about your career, developing skills that are AI resistant, at least in the short run.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks, Yaron.
All right. Thanks, Jacob. Let's see. All right, Holden.
Hey guys. I guess that I have to talk about the corporate tax. I'm sorry. You just
Okay, go for it.
put that out there. So so basically let's just do a thought experiment, right?
Yeah.
If you had 100% corporate tax, profit tax, every investment becomes unprofitable, right? So there's no the value of the investment is based on the future free cash flows it produces from now until judgment day, discounted back by an interest rate. So every investment yields no more profits. So every investment is zero, right? So the corporate tax ultimately is directly changing the profitability of an investment. So let's say I'm a pizza firm and I make pizzas. If my profit margin is 5% on these pizzas and it's above the natural rate of interest, I'm making economic profits. But if they slap a corporate tax on of say 2% and the interest rate is 4%, then I'm making economic losses now. So basically, the corporate tax is changing the profitability of an investment. So the shareholders are now earning lower returns on the capital invested. Now, you can have an empirical study that says, oh, the wages are going down or whatever it is. And that's all great, but it doesn't change the theoretical fact that the investment is based on the future cash that it produces, and you're changing the cash that it produces.
So if my company is listed on the stock exchange, and you raise the corporate taxes, then what would you expect? What would you expect the stock price to do?
Oh, it would definitely fall.
It would definitely fall.
100%, yeah.
And if it doesn't,
then there's some other factor. It's you got to hold ceteris paribus, right? So the future cash flow is less. So discounted back by a lower interest rate, maybe it's more. Maybe something happens in your industry.
So no, nothing's happened. Let's assume nothing's happened because I changed it today, and it's the only thing that's really changing right now, and nothing else is changing. And you know the fact is that you know, let's say you know, I'd have to run a numbers example. I'd have to run an example with numbers with you, but
yeah,
the reality is the reality is that the investors bear a small part, a very small part of the actual cost of the tax. So profitability doesn't go down that much because the cost can be, you know, passed through. You don't like the term pass through, but because all my competitors are bearing the same cost prices, all of us will raise prices, right? So yes, you know, the rate of profit will go down, but it won't go down by the same amount as the tax, right? So shareholders will pay part of the tax, consumers will pay part of the tax, and if I can cut my costs by cutting if I can cut costs by cutting my employees, then the employees will pay part of the tax.
Yeah, you're going to employ fewer factors of production because it's by definition less profitable now.
So all of them affected by the tax, and you can divide the cost of the tax between the different factors of production. And you can say consumers pay part of it, employees pay part of it, capital goods pay part of it, and shareholders pay part of it. And when you
So
run the actual numbers, it turns out that shareholders pay the damage to shareholders is the smallest of all the different factors of
we
production.
we have to distinguish between the short and the long run. So like in the short run, the investment is now this marginal firm now is a sub-marginal firm or a
But
super
it's not
marginal.
because all firms are affected exactly the same way.
Yes, but firms have different profit margins, so it changes it changes whether or not a line of production is worth taking on or not. So for if I'm making 30% profit margins and it brings my profit margin down to 15%, I can still do fine. But it'll change based on the
Given that
profitability.
everybody bears it, everybody can then lower
Yes.
their costs and therefore increase their profit margin.
So, but we have to distinguish between the short and the long run. So the short run, you're going to see firms exiting. You're in the short run, you're going to have lower profit margins. The firms that are making profit margins lower than the cost of capital are going to leave the industry because
Yes.
it's ineffective.
Unless
So
they can cut their costs to such an extent
yes,
that they
but you
now
have
have a
to.
higher profit
Yes,
margin.
sure, yeah. I'm
But
just
that's
saying
what,
Yes, yeah, sure. If you could cut your costs, great. That's awesome. But with the tax, you could have done that without. I mean, with the tax, you
no, you
now
couldn't
have.
have done it without, because without the increase in the tax, without the increase in the tax, there is a certain equilibrium across the industry of where the costs are being determined,
Yes,
right?
sure.
So your
Yes,
employees will
obvious.
go somewhere
Yeah.
else if you cut their wages.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
now everybody in the industry is cutting wages.
Yes. But the wage is valued at the marginal value product. So the discounted marginal value product. So the discounted marginal value product is yes, it'll change in the long. Yes, the
But the wages are
effective
being determined
discounted.
by
Well, hold
competition for
on.
labor, right? The wages are being determined by competition for labor. And the reality is that you've just changed the equilibrium, the competition for that labor, because everybody now has an incentive to cut labor, to cut the cost of
Well,
labor.
it's ultimately no matter what your competition is, you can't pay more than marginal value product. If you make losses on the
Sure,
labor, pay if you pay more.
sure,
So it doesn't even if you're a monopoly, it's the
sure.
same thing.
Yes.
So basically you what we're running into here is that the effective marginal value product of the line of production is lower. Okay. So the rent of everything, the rent of capital goods, the wages of labor are all lower because the effective profit that it generates is now lower.
That's right.
Okay. So the marginal firms will go out of the industry because they earn lower profit margins now. So the return on capital has now been lower. So
Yes,
we have less investment in capital goods.
that's right.
They depreciate, they go out, and then the firm leaves the industry. So now those shareholders have to find new investments to go because the investment that they previously had was no longer profitable under current tax rates. If we had a 100% tax rate to make it super simple in a thought experiment,
Yep.
there's no
All
profitability of
firms go out of business.
we
Absolutely.
go to autarky, complete
Yes,
autarky.
yes.
So basically, the incidence is in theory, and or basically the incidence ultimately is on the investors, but it's true that the discounted marginal value product of labor is now lower.
Yep.
Um,
So
and
their
and
wages will go down to reflect
all the
that.
factors, and that's going to go down to every factor because they buy the inputs and they buy so every factor of production throughout the structure is going to face lower marginal value product, and because land and labor and capitalist interest doesn't change, but land and labor earn lower marginal value products, so they face the incidents too, but the shareholders also face incidents here because you're
Yeah, I'm
changing
not
the
saying
cost of
shareholders
labor.
don't bear any of the cost. They bear the cost. I'm saying that empirically, again, a majority of the pain here is ultimately in relatively small changes in capital gains taxes. Now, again, if you increase it 100%, clearly everybody goes bankrupt and everybody
Yes.
suffers the consequence of everything. But in small changes of capital gains, most of the impact is felt by labor and by consumers.
Ultimately, you're gonna change the profit stream of the investment. So the investment is
Shareholders still bear some of it, but they bear
Yeah.
less than what you would they don't bear the entire amount is the point. And
Sure. Okay.
they
Yeah.
actually bear as a percentage less than labor and consumers.
I mean, it's going to be hard to do this in an empirical study because you're not holding the factors constant. So it's very
But there are
difficult.
ways in which you can do an empirical study to hold factors constant. There are ways in which you can untangle this and figure it out, and people have done it. Right?
But
There's plenty of
I would
literature
encourage
on
you
it.
to share it with me. But I guess ultimately what's going on here, this is a fundamental point. The
Yeah.
future profits of the business is what it's worth. So discounted by interest.
Yes.
So you change the future profits of the business. It's very simple.
Yes,
And
but how
obviously
much have I changed the profit of the business? And then we'll cut it there.
by the rate of the tax, ceteris paribus.
No, because as you've said, my labor costs have gone down.
Yeah.
And since I face less
Well,
competition,
well,
my revenue has gone up. So my profitability in the future goes down, but not by the rate of the tax, by something less than the rate of the tax.
But what if now that you have labor has gone out of the industry, so now law of diminishing returns, you now have to pay more for labor because the marginal value product is higher. I mean, it's like it's you can't just say like in every scenario, like, and then you're going to change like how many factors you employ. This is going to change like, the rents of them per the law of return. So like you're going to have like a bunch of different factors here. But ultimately the investment is less profitable now for the shareholders. So they, as
Yes,
investors,
but not by the amount of the tax, by something smaller than that.
if the costs are the same, which they're not going to be, I understand that. If the costs are the same, then yes, but the same of the tax. But that's not going to happen, obviously.
Yes, that's right. So it's less than the tax, given that the costs are going to shift and revenue is going to shift.
I don't want to like take up the whole thing.
Yeah, to be
Sorry.
continued, I guess. Let's see, Jennifer.
I was thinking the other day, you know how people when they'll make an argument for God and they'll say obviously there's an intelligent design in reality, so it must be a God. And when I was a kid, I used to think it's not very intelligent. Of course, you have to define that, but if there's a God, why are things so difficult, like for living things to survive and all the pain and everything? That's not very intelligent. Now, then, of course, when I got older, I understood that's not a philosophical argument. I mean, it could be a God and he's just a jerk or whatever. But when they're saying intelligent design, what they're referring to is the law of identity, right? That there's a law of identity. So they're trying to equate that with intelligent design. Is that what they're referring to when they say that, do you think?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, do you know when people say intelligent design and that there
Yeah.
must be a God because
Yeah, I mean, the argument they use is you pick up a clock, you look at a watch or clock, and you immediately know that somebody designed it, somebody made it because it's so intricate and it works so well, and there's no, and you look at nature and you go, well, somebody must have created this, must have made it because it's so complex and it's so functions by these laws. This doesn't look like it's arbitrary or random.
Well, that's what I'm saying, that because the law of identity exists, they're trying to equate, well, because things are what they are, and they act the way they're supposed to act. In other words, the law of identity.
Therefore, somebody must have designed them. Yeah, that's right. Okay, I never thought of it that way, but yes, I think that's right.
That's what they're trying to refer to, which of course is wrong in the way
Law of
they're
identity, causality, yes, they're trying to reference that for something that violates the law of identity and violates the law of causality.
Right, and yeah, that's
Who
really
designed
dumb.
the designer?
Right.
They never have an answer for that.
When I was a kid, I did used to think, though, that's not very intelligent. If I could make one thing that.
Donahue asked Rand about that, saying
Yeah.
aren't you impressed by the order in the universe? And she was saying, no. And she said, no. She said, what would a disorderly universe mean? It would mean like basically the violation of the law of identity.
Right. Yeah, the Greeks used to call chaos. They thought there was chaos, and somehow it, which doesn't make sense either. But anyway.
Yep. No, I mean it's the kind of excuses people come up with, to justify God is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. They get pretty creative sometimes.
Yep.
Well, thank you.
All right, thanks, Jennifer. Adam.
There's something puzzling about the entire intellectual community in history and cultural philosophy ignoring scientific evidence. For example, I've encountered over and over the argument that the German concentration camps and death camps were industrial, and that's an argument against industry. Now, the fact is, and it's absolutely solid science, that during the Crusades, by the end of the Crusades, the ancestral population of Ashkenazi Jews, that is essentially the entire Jewish population north of Spain and Italy, was reduced to between 270 and 350 individuals. Now, before that, we don't have the exact numbers, but we know from the last Roman censuses that Jews constituted about 10% of the population in the Roman Empire, including the areas where the ancestral population of the Jews lived. So during the Crusades, an overwhelming number, more than 99.9% of all the Jews in Europe north of Spain and Italy were murdered without any resort to industry or modernity. In the Shoah, the Germans killed about between 1/3 and 1/2 of all the Jews in the territories they contained. So why is this still being used in the anti-industrial argument? Why is the scientific evidence being ignored?
I'm not sure what the scientific that's being ignored. The reality is that the Germans in World War II did it more efficiently and did it on an industrial scale. The Crusades killed maybe a greater percentage of Jews, but they did it less systematically and with less efficiency and in a much more bloody way, in a much more personal way. They literally had to go up and kill one at a time. So I think there's complete justification for talking about the fact that this was done in an industrial way. I also think the other thing about the Crusades is that it was very much done, as far as I can tell, very much done kind of on the ground by the people who were participating in the Crusades. They were inspired by in the moment to kill as many Jews as they could, versus a plan, a regimented plan to rid the world of Jews, which I think is what the Nazis implemented. So while they killed more as a percentage, it was just done differently, and I think pointing out the differences between them is not invalid.
Well, first of all, the evidence is from DNA, we can
Yeah,
trace.
no, I'm not challenging the evidence. The evidence is clearly that the Crusade killed more, but they did it differently. And the point of industrialization is the fact that the Nazis did it in an industrialized way is not to suggest that they killed more Jews. It's just to suggest that they did it in a in a particular way, which is different than the way it was done during the Crusades.
But if they killed a much, much, much lower fraction, how can it be argued that it was more efficient?
Oh, because they expended less energy to do it. They didn't have to. They didn't have to. Wield swords and roam around in different little villages, and it didn't take them hundreds of years to do. Remember, the Crusades were not one crusade. There were three, four, five of them, and they each one of them killed more Jews and more Jews. So it was a much bigger expedition of energy. It wasn't as systematically planned. It was much more the emotion of the moment. And again, it was not industrial. It wasn't a conveyor belt. So I mean, killing is killing, but there's a difference between the two. It's just a descriptive of the difference. Now, it's also true that people don't know, ignore, evade the brutality of the Crusades, particularly towards Jews. They're not interested in it because that would blame Christianity for it.
Yeah.
And they don't want to hear it.
Yaron, would you also say that the Crusades, like, I mean, okay, a lot of that was taking place was a bloodlust kind of thing. I'm not excusing it, obviously.
Yeah.
Whereas the Nazi thing it seemed to be kind of beyond bloodlust. It was just, okay, we have a job to do, let's go do it.
Yeah, I definitely think that is a difference. And the Crusades, a lot of it was local preachers revving people up and getting people excited in order to get them motivated to go to the crusade, and the Jews being the first victims that they encountered, that they used up the bloodlust, if you will, on. Whereas the Nazis had a systematic plan. I don't think the Crusades had a plan. It just happened. So I think that is part of the difference.
Okay.
I do not know if we know how many Jews were alive during the Crusade and what percentage of the total global Jewish population they killed. They clearly killed, as Adam says, 99% or whatever the number is of Central and Western Europe, Western European, not including Spain and Italy, of the Jews. And it is interesting that Italy, you didn't see this going on, and Italy is where the Pope was, and the Pope was actually opposed to killing Jews during the Crusade. So the Pope actually objected to it, and it was local preachers who traveled with the Crusaders who got them riled up and got them going. At least that's true of the First Crusade. I'm not sure what happened in the others in terms of the Pope's involvement. All right, thanks, Adam. Let's see, Amlan.
Yeah. Just a question, like small question again. What role do police have to maintain law and order at private events, things like concerts, sports events and things? I mean, one would think that, okay, that's their job, is to protect individual rights. But on the other hand, I give a specific example. Like years ago, I went to an AC/DC concert in Montreal, and when we came out, the riot squad was lined up there. That nothing happened, but given that it was Montreal, I could certainly see they're exercising caution because they love to riot there.
Yep.
So was that I mean, obviously that costs a lot more. You have police.
I mean, I think that's legitimate. If they worry about the potential for a violation of rights at scale, then they need to be prepared for that, and they need to be ready for that. So I think absolutely the police have. Now, whether they are going to enter the venue, they would enter the venue only if there's real evidence of something already happening in the venue, right? So they're not, if riots break out during a football game, then the police will come in, but they won't. And if there's rumors that riots are going to happen, they might station police inside the venue already in advance.
Okay. But I mean, in general, though, like when you have these venues and let's say you have 30,000, 20,000, whatever number of people, is it unreasonable to say, okay, we want to have some police presence because, in the general population, let's say you have one officer for every 1,000 people, whatever, now you've got 20,000 people in one place.
Yeah.
I mean, just it doesn't even have to be a place where you say, okay, there's a riot that's likely to happen. It could just be, you get that many people together in a place, you're more likely to get some conflict.
Absolutely.
It might result in some fights and stuff.
Strikes me as very reasonable, and the police's job is to try to anticipate these things and to figure out how to deploy the resources.
And there shouldn't be an extra charge for that, right? Like the venue shouldn't have to pay for that.
No, I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, maybe the venue does pay for it. Maybe that's part of the cost of business in a free society. If you want police on your property to secure it, maybe they do. But if they're outside, certainly not.
And if something happens and the police have to come in, you should.
Yeah, then they come in. But if you want to secure it in advance, maybe you do pay for it.
Yeah,
maybe it's part of how the police fund themselves.
Right.
That in certain circumstances they do charge a fee for that.
Because you'd want to be careful with that, right? Because you don't want cops starting to like shake down people to say, well,
exactly.
if you want us there, you got to pay.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
Because everything's private. The roads are private, all that stuff.
Yep.
I mean, okay.
Yeah, and you'd have to think about how do you create laws that allow the police to access private roads.
Yeah.
When can they access private roads? When do they have the authority to move and to cross people's property? It becomes more complicated in a fully private society. It also becomes much easier and much simpler, but there's a sense in which you have to rewrite laws and rethink about those laws.
Yeah. Okay, there's a related question I have, which I'll ask as a separate question. But, thanks.
Sure, Andrew. And I need to go. I forgot to do the super chats. So
yeah.
Yeah. Andrew.
Hi. I used to get so pissed off at public infrastructure and riding the subway and just getting stuck on the tracks and all the stuff that comes along with like a state-owned infrastructure product like that. But now I do see it as kind of cool, like when I'm on the subway, that it's on a bridge, for example, in New York City, like it's still Western know-how and engineering, and
sure,
it's a feat, it's a modern feat that I'm riding that subway, and I feel much more benevolent about it.
Yep.
But I also am, it's a little bitterness too, that it could be so much better.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. You've got to acknowledge the engineering success and that somebody built this, and of course the original New York subway was built by private enterprise, but then resent the fact that it's now state-owned and therefore primitive as compared to what it could be.
Yeah,
I think that's absolutely right. And it's it's like you travel in China on a high-speed rail, and this thing goes unbelievably fast, and it's a completely smooth ride, and it's amazing, and it's a beautiful train, and the tracks are amazing. And on the one hand, it's wow, the engineering is amazing, and what an achievement. On the other hand, the Chinese government built this, and that's horrific. So, but you've got to be able to appreciate the positive value associated with it as well.
Yeah, like I feel much more benevolent looking at it from that angle than just being pissed off,
Good. Yep.
All right. Thanks.
Sure. Ian.
So on the more positive side, so I'm a little more mixed on AI than most people, and I think I agree with what you said, that your thoughts that we're probably in a bubble, but that doesn't mean that there still won't be important things done and there isn't great things happening.
Yep.
And I use AI every day in my job as a developer, writing code, and I'm working in code that I really understand, so I can see if it's doing something right or if it's doing something wrong. and then manually fix it, things like that. But one thing I've been doing lately, which I don't know if you ever code or look at this stuff, but it's fun to play around with, is what's called vibe coding, where I'm working in a language I don't know. I don't understand the packages I'm working on. I don't understand any of the guts of it.
Yeah.
And you take one of these agents and you tell it, this is what I want as an output. And the really neat thing is it's not like ChatGPT where you're typing something and it gives you a response and then you cut and paste it. It will modify the code that is sitting in your area. It will run tests. It looks, the way they've done a really good job of presenting it. So it looks like it's thinking,
Yeah.
oh, I changed this, but the test failed. Let me see if there's a syntax error. I found a syntax error. I'm fixing that. And it's like watching a person walk through it.
Wow.
Like it's really spooky and really powerful. Like I've made more progress in this thing that I don't, again, I'm not even looking at the code. I don't understand what it's doing beneath
Yeah.
it. I'm just saying, this is what output I want. Oh, the output doesn't match. Can you change this? And it's not perfect. It's not doing it exactly, and it can be very frustrating and still
Yeah.
very limited. But for where we are, it's a really interesting thing, and everybody should try it. Try something you always wanted to write and you don't understand programming. Try one of these agents and see what it does, and it's fun.
And there are agents now that'll create a website for you. I mean, you tell them what you want on the website and what the goal is, and they'll just build a website for you, and then you can change it. You can have it make changes to it depending on the output, as you said. I mean, it really is cool. I just asked ChatGPT actually to take one of my shows and turn it into an essay. I haven't looked at the result yet, but I'm curious. I did it to the Foreign Policy one I did last week about what a proper America First foreign policy would look like. So I'm curious what ChatGPT did with that, but I guess we'll see.
To me, there's two fascinating things. One is the things it can do, and two, the things is it can't do. Because that's also really super interesting. Like, why can't it do this one obvious thing?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and it's only going to get better. I don't know what the upper limit is. I don't know how much better it can get, given that it's constrained by the fact that it's not thinking. But it is going to get better, and it is going to be fascinating to see how all this works out. And there's no question that this has to increase productivity. Productivity is going to go up, which means ultimately economic growth will go up. Everything else held constant, which is not. But you don't. This is what's going to save us from that stagnation, right? We're heading towards stagnation, and this might just allow us to get through it.
I mean, I think I'll borrow from what Holden said, which is sometimes you got to think of the short term and the long term. Because in the short term, I'm not sure productivity is going to go up because you can waste a lot of time trying to get this stuff to do what you want.
Sure.
Like you can go into the weeds and consume more time than it would to fix it because you're like, it's so close, let me just keep trying. And it's like, okay, I could fix this manually in 1 minute, but I want to get it to do it. And it takes me an hour.
Yeah, and that's true of technology. I mean,
yeah.
When there was this big mystery in economics during the 1980s and into the 1990s that in spite of the introduction of the PC and everything else, productivity couldn't see any growth in productivity in the numbers. There was nothing. And then suddenly, like I forget the exact year, 93 or 94, productivity just starts shooting up. And it's like the cumulative effect of all this. People finally figured out how to use it, and it starts appearing in the numbers, and you suddenly see and you see that happen as a consequence. You see what happens is you've got stagnation in wages throughout the 80s and early 90s, and then starting in 94, wages start going up. Pretty much in every profession, and that it's a product of finally technology has had an impact on productivity increasing, and ultimately that gets reflected in wages.
Yeah, everything is slower than people think it is, both on the good side and the bad side.
And yet everything is also faster than people think.
Yeah, it's slower until it's faster.
Yes, it's slow in some dimensions and faster in others. Who would have thought we'd be talking about AI the way we're talking about it now? I mean, 3-4 years ago, nobody. Right?
No, it was a joke. I used the early versions of the ChatGPT type stuff. It was a joke. It was pathetic. And you're like, this is never going to be interesting. And then now it's crazy.
And it suddenly became interesting, and it happened very quickly, very, very quickly. Yeah, thanks, Ian. Stephen.
in Wednesday's Wall Street Journal on the 20th.
Yep.
Did you read the Holman Jenkins Jr. article, The End of the Green Delusion?
The end of the what delusion?
Maybe you didn't. Maybe you missed that one. Maybe it was the
Stephen, you should turn off your video.
online.
Yeah, Stephen, turn off your video and maybe we
The
can
End
hear
of the
you better if
Green
you do that.
Delusion.
End of the green delusion. No, I haven't. I didn't read that. No.
Oh.
Was it
I had to
good?
turn it off. Yeah, it was very good. I really wanted your opinion of it. I don't know. I thought it was that I didn't understand all of it, but I thought if you had read it,
No, I haven't read it. Although I usually like
explain it, really.
Holman Jenkins.
Here's stuff to do.
I'll check it out. I'll check out.
All right, do that better now.
You there?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
you're
okay.
still
Thank
breaking
you,
up.
Yaron. I am. It didn't make any difference.
That's a little better now. That's a little better. No, it's no good. I'm going to mute you
before the next show, and for Windows 11 with Windows 11, and I'll be.
Okay, I lost you. All right, let me take some super chats here. Let's see. We've got Michael. Michael says, do you think many young objectivists believe if we actually lived in Gulch, I would obviously be super successful and happy, but because the world is so corrupt, it's everyone else's fault. My life sucks. I think quite a few objectivists think that, young and old, not just young objectivists. But yes, I think a lot of people who are attracted to objectivism use the state of the world as justification for their own failures, sadly. Stephen Pettit, I recently rewatched Close Encounters of the Third Kind and was amazed how its theme of communication was concretized in every frame. If directors haven't read Rand regarding abstractions and concretes, where do they get it from? Well, I mean, the idea of abstraction and concretes, and it's not just directors, right? I mean, that exists in novels, that exists in painting, and so I don't think you have to know philosophy to have that. People, artists get that, they get it directly from reality without necessarily even having a complete understanding of what it means. And they use it they use it as a tool to communicate ideas. There's a lot of implicit, if you will, implicit knowledge out there that is that people have. It's the same as to say as, I mean, was nobody ever self-interested before Ayn Rand came up with the concept of self-interest or rational self-interest? Well, people were to some extent. I mean, they weren't consistently, just like I don't know that people have an understanding of art that is as extensive as Ayn Rand's, yet they still produced art, right? So even without having the full philosophical understanding, you can still use and understand at some level these concepts. And of course, Rand is not the first person to understand the relationship, that there is a relationship between abstractions and concretes. That was, I mean, she has a particular understanding of how you form abstractions from concretes. But the relationship between the two, I don't think is something she is the first to come up with. All right. Hopefully I understood that question. But Michael, are you going to interview Blake Scholl, or does he want to keep his objectivism on down low? If he becomes successful and turns supersonic flight into norm and credits objectivism for it, that's a game changer. Well, I mean, I don't know if it's a game changer, but it would be great if that happened. The reality is, I've tried to interview Blake Scholl. I don't think he wants to right now be interviewed, but hopefully once he's successful, that goes away and he's happy to be interviewed. So we will see whether any one thing is a game changer, I'm skeptical, right? I don't think there's one game changer to anything. I think this is just a lot of hard work, and there's a lot of things that are going to have to happen for the game to change. All right, let's go through some of these other ones, and then we'll turn back to the panel. Now that Israel is being accused of starving Gazans, do you regret advising Israel to starve Gazans earlier this year? No, they should have starved Gazans, right after October 7th, and then we'd be all over this, and it'll be, we'd be past this, and we'd be beyond the victory, and we'd be talking about solutions rather than still talking about this. But no, the reality is that the notion that you have to feed your enemy while you're fighting the enemy is bizarre and altruistic and ridiculous and stupid. And Israel should have never done it. And starting October 8th, they should have turned off the water, turned off the electricity, turned off the internet, and stopped delivering food aid. And then gone in and finished the job. And I think ultimately fewer people would die. But however many would die, would die. They started a war, you need to finish it. Michael, is evolutionary psychology a rehash of BS Nazi eugenics determinism? No, I don't think so. It's a rehash of determinism. It's a form of determinism, but don't look to everything you don't like as being originating with the Nazis. And eugenics, of course, didn't start with the Nazis. Eugenics was a movement that started in the United States, and the Nazis only picked up on it much, much later. No, evolutionary psychology is an attempt to explain human behavior in terms of our genes. And it's very tempting and it's very seductive, particularly if you don't believe in free will, then your behavior has to come from somewhere, and your genes is probably how it comes. And if you understand how evolution works, you can come up with lots of just so stories to justify current behavior based on your genetic makeup. I don't think there's any greater agenda than that going on here. Michael, have Israelis lost a portion of their altruism since October 7th? All the Israelis I've spoken with want Gaza wiped out, no mercy. Yeah, I don't know who you talk to, but the reality is that something like 75% of Israelis, I think the last poll I saw, want the war to end and end now, don't want the war to continue, don't want Israel to occupy Gaza City, want a deal to free the hostages. I don't see any reason to assume that altruism is completely gone. Certainly, when being altruistic causes you to face an existential threat directly, in the short run, imminently, then yeah, altruism usually is put to the side and you do what you have to do to survive. And that's what Israel experienced and to some extent is still experiencing. But altruism has staying power, and I don't think it's completely gone. I think it's still there, sadly. Neo says, if you were that celebrity, would you take a chance knowing potentially it might hurt your career? I don't know. I've never thought of being a celebrity. Maybe not. I'm not blaming the celebrity. I'm not saying that they're irrational or wrong for doing what they're doing. I'm just saying that's the fact. That's the reality of it, without a value judgment on it. But I think at some point, you've got to be willing to stand by your values. So maybe early in your career, you don't do it. But at some point, you have to look at John Allison. He was a CEO of a bank in a heavily regulated industry. And at some point he said, no, I'm standing up for what I believe. I'm going to talk. I'm going to say what I believe. I'm going to say what I think, and let the chips fall where they may. And that's what he did. He gave lectures. He gave talks. And on a number of occasions, he told the regulators to take a hike. So it's difficult to do, but at some point you need to reach a point in your career where you can do that, and you're willing to do that. You need to have the courage to do it. Robert, had to jump off the panel, another busy Saturday, but I'm listening while getting things currently, tuning one of my pianos, and I always appreciate these monthly contributors sessions. Thanks, Robert. Thanks for participating. Appreciate that. All right, let's do a quick round with the panel. Let's start with Holden.
All right. So you're basically saying that you say that the corporate tax incidence is on consumers, um, wages, and very small portion is investors, right?
I'm saying, yeah, I'm saying, relatively to consumers and employees, a small portion is on investors.
Okay. So
I don't know how
I
very it is, but yeah.
right, right. So, yeah, I mean, so for me, I have investors in wages and investors in the marginal product of labor and revenue is lower, and then um and entrepreneurial profits are lower in the short term. And so basically, that's where I have the incidents, and then I have it going, of course, like back to the early stages of production. So those entrepreneurs will eventually earn lower profits, and the wages and land owners will both have lower net value product. So the consumer, of course, you're changing the cost to produce it, so the consumer, that's going to change the profitability of producing it. So, and of course, like to the extent that you're value productive, the more you get taxed. Um, so basically, the most value productive firms pay the most tax, um, and basically, you'll get a scenario where with a corporate tax, you'll get a scenario where the consumer um, is going to pay a higher price, of course, again, not because they are passing the cost on, right? Like in that the net income is now lower for the firm because of the corporate tax. So they produce fewer factors of production. They employ fewer factors of production to undergo this project, and therefore the output is lower. So the good in existence is now lower because of the corporate tax. So now you're bidding up the demand schedule intersects with the supply of the good in existence at a higher equilibrium price. So the prices are higher, like this is the very first conversation we had because you brought up the corporate tax.
Yep.
The price is higher for the good because the equilibrium price is higher because you're moving along the demand curve. Um, so basically, I agree with you that if you mean, like you said in the first part, that the if you mean by pass through that they simply pay higher prices because of the tax, like you want to emphasize, yes, true.
Yes.
I'm with you 100% there. And that way, resources are not allocated in the most value productive uses because of the tax, and consumers will pay for that, or will be worse off. Consumer welfare will be worse off because the very value productive firms are being taxed the most.
Yes.
So consumers are worse off for that. But I want to make sure you don't think that like simply like some people like you're not saying that, oh well, now we have a higher cost of production, so now we're just going to have that the consumer pay that, so our net income is the same. Like we're on the same page here that the net income is less, the consumer pays more because of the decreased production, et cetera.
Yes, but I also think that you have to take into account, how competition works in a market like this. The fact that that some of the producers are going to go out of business because of this, so there's less competition, and that since everybody is facing the same increase in cost, the same increase in tax, the competitive pressures are to increase prices.
Okay, the thing I would
And
say about
that
that,
translates through, as you said, a shift in the supply curve, which generates a higher price across the entire industry and between competitors.
yeah,
Like in
the
a
thing
normal environment, I can't just raise prices because obviously people would just shift to my competitors. But my competitor is facing exactly the same situation I am, and therefore he is not going to he is going to match my price. He's not going to decrease the price.
Yeah, no, I agree that they're raising the price. But we agree, I guess, that for the reason. But I guess it also is important to understand that the best, Google is pays more tax than some marginal Google search or knockoff search, right? Even though they're competitors or whatever, Google is going to face a higher burden because of the tax. Like you agree with that, right? Because like basically what I'm saying is it's not all created equal for the corporate tax. Like I
Yeah, of
wouldn't
course
go that
it's not.
far. So,
Yeah, it's not created equal, but again, Google's tricky because where does Google generate the profit from? Right, it's generated from advertising, so you have to think about who the competitor is. But yeah, I mean, Google's paying more taxes because Google's bigger and it generates more revenue, and it's going to affect every aspect of Google's business.
yeah, and it's taxed pro rata to the profit. So,
Yes.
you got like it's like super productive, and then so like Google, is going to employ much fewer factors of production than say Firefox or I don't know, whatever company.
Yeah, but
Um
the point I was making about Amazon yesterday was Google could probably afford not to raise prices for a while, right? Whereas its smaller competitors are probably just going to raise prices and thus be driven out of the market.
yeah, and you can raise prices all you want, but the question of course is someone going to pay
It's
it. So,
profitability, exactly.
yeah.
So you're not going to,
So,
nobody's going to pay it because Google. So the good example right now is Amazon. Amazon uh, is not raising prices because of tariffs, because it can afford to absorb them for a while. Walmart is doing the same thing. Long term, they have to raise the price, but in the short run, they can absorb them for a while. And a lot of the small competitors are going out of business because they cannot afford to absorb those prices increases.
sure. Yeah, and we're with each other on that. But of course we have to make sure that we say, well, Amazon and every firm has a profit maximizing price for whatever they sell. If they go above it, they earn lower net income. If they go
So they're going below
below
it. Right now, they're going below that price, and they're driving competitors out of the business not as a
yeah.
consequence of that, as a consequence of the tariffs. Yes.
Yeah, and tariffs reduce net income too. So,
Yes.
like we're, and sales taxes reduce net income and value added taxes and so on and so
Yep.
forth.
Absolutely.
So, okay, cool. I think, yeah, basically the point is like a lot of people's like, if we just say pass through, then a lot of people will think like the firm is employing the same amount of factors it would in the counterfactual.
No, I
And
mean, of course not. Yeah.
yeah, of course not, right? So like they think, oh, we just it's in your potato chip, like it's like okay, well, let's see like the underlying mechanisms that makes it so the price right. But yeah, I
Yeah,
think we're good.
and this is why tariffs cause economic slowdown. They don't cause economic slowdown just because consumers are paying high prices. They cause economic slowdown because businesses are deploying fewer means fewer.
Yeah, the marginal product of the economy is lower now. You're
Exactly.
producing less stuff, so
Exactly.
and then yeah, and then a bunch of firms that would be producing stuff are no longer doing it. So I guess
Yep.
like yeah,
Yep.
okay, I think we're good. I yeah, I just like yeah, sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
The
It's
take.
good. It's good to get these things that get these things accurate. Um, and it's interesting because we're not yet seeing a flurry of bankruptcies. I expect to see that, but we're not yet seeing it, and it's going to be interesting to see if it happens and
Yeah,
where it happens.
and of
It'll
course
happen
like
in small
yeah,
businesses.
and some firms like like it's like really different and how much they import. So like they'll be disproportionately hurt by this, and maybe they had really high profit margins before, but now they're going way down.
Well, I mean,
So
small retailers in toys and in furniture never had high profit margins, and we'll see how they survive. It's going to be really
yeah,
interesting to see how they survive this,
yeah,
and whether what happens is that the big retailers just pick up that product, and the small retailers just go out of business. But
uh-huh.
I don't know how it plays out. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. All right.
Cool. All right, let's see. Jennifer.
Ginger Clark on the chat said she sent you a long
Oh,
email
that's right.
question. Did
That's
you
right.
get that?
Yeah, let me find it. I'll answer it.
Yeah,
All
you
right.
can answer that. I'm done for today. Thank you.
Okay. Let me find Ginger.
Seeing you, Jennifer.
Bye.
Thanks, Jennifer. Where is it? Um, maybe I got it through Angela. One sec. Let me find it. Yes, there it is. All right, Ginger asked this. I'm thinking about, been thinking about this for a long time. I truly don't understand. I would be very grateful to your opinion. My thinking, Nikki Haley was the most knowledgeable and polite of all the political candidates we've been offered, perhaps even in my lifetime. She's physically savvy, was an accountant, knows foreign affairs, was in the UN, and she's polite to alternate positions. Was sensitive to the fact that abortion is a personal issue and said it would not be politicized, even though she felt strongly. She campaigned hard and she seemed to think dispassionately. When her campaign lost steam, she threw her support to Trump, but she didn't endorse him. She said only that he was the better choice and that the alternative was worse. I saw her position as being in the spirit of loyalty to the country, not to the party. It was a strength that Trump was as weakness and made her pay for it. Why do you think she didn't win? Am I not seeing this person clearly? Am I just making up someone to admire? Or did we just throw over the best candidate ever? And if so, why? What does that say about the country? Well, it says the country's in bad shape. I was a supporter of Nikki Haley. I thought she was the best candidate among the Republicans. I don't know if she's the best candidate ever. She had a lot of weaknesses. And I can't remember all of them, but she had something on privacy, which was terrible. She had a number of things that were pretty bad. But overall, she was the best candidate by far. Much better than Trump, much better than Kamala, much better than the other Republicans up there on stage. And she didn't win because the country is in a bad place. It's in a bad position. The electorate doesn't want rational, reasonable, thoughtful. Indeed, it blames all its problems on rational, reasonable, thoughtful, which what they think the previous candidates were all. It wanted a irrational, thuggish, brutish president. That's what America wanted. So you're implying here that the best candidate wins, and I think it's really rare that the best candidate wins. I don't know that Bush was the best Republican on the Republican side in the primaries in in 2000. I don't know that that George Bush Sr. was the best Republican available after Ronald Reagan. None of these candidates. Bob Dole in 1996. Bob Dole was a horrible candidate. So I don't think elections are determined by who's good. Elections are determined by what the public thinks is good, or not even the public, what the committed partisan within the Republican Party in this case think is good. And they love Trump. And they hated Nikki Haley because Nikki Haley represents everything they think went wrong with this country. They think she's too good, too tough on foreign policy. They don't want toughness on foreign policy. They want peace. She's relatively pro-capitalist. They don't want capitalism. They think capitalism is what screwed them, right? It's what's made they lost their jobs and their income is lower. All the mythologies that they have around economics, they hold as caused by capitalism. So they didn't want somebody who stood for, relatively speaking, free markets and a tough America. They want a America that retracts from the world and an America that abandons capitalism explicitly and implicitly. And they got what they wanted. And Nikki Haley's finished. I mean, I don't think she has a chance in the Republican Party because the Republican Party is no longer that party anymore, or if it ever was, right? Never really was.
And also, Yaron, and I think you've said this many times, I think they wanted people that would tell them that none of this is their fault, even implicitly.
Definitely. And I think Nikki tried to do that, but she just doesn't. I don't think she's dishonest enough.
Yeah. And if you support capitalism, even the lukewarm like people like her do, you are saying, well, okay, get off your butt and do something.
Yep,
And
I think that's
people
right.
didn't want to hear that. They wanted like, okay, I can sit back and Donnie is going to take care of it for me.
I think that's right. All right, Adam.
Yes, this may be a question I asked before, but it's at the top of my mind, so I'll ask it again and see if your answer is any different. most Americans by this time have been systematically disminded by the comprachicos, that is, by the pragmatist anti-philosophy of education. And we now have a president who exemplifies the disminded brain. I don't know how far you can call it a mind even.
Yep.
And he was educated in very expensive private schools. And yet, when I listen to objectivists talk about education, they keep downplaying the anti-philosophy and advocate for private schools against government schools. And yet, if I go to Europe, for example, many people in Poland were educated in government schools. I got my early grades in government schools, or at least a cooperative that was totally under government control, as everything was in a communist country. And yet all the childcare and kindergartens were Montessori. The schools from then on were very conceptual. There was no pragmatist influence, and if I go there, every service that I encountered is much more mindful, not in the Buddhist sense, but in a realistic sense, than we get here in America. And recently I've been through a bad time dealing with the installation people from a business that is generally very well run, but all they can tell me is, well, we subcontracted our installation to the small business because that's what the tax laws encourage us to do.
Yep.
And don't blame us.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. A few things. One is, I think you're romanticizing Poland in a way that it's not justified. So I've been to Poland many times, and yeah, the educational system in Europe is better than it is in the US, and in Poland it's better than the US. It's not great though. They still don't know a lot of stuff. They're still quite ignorant. They're very Catholic. They're very religious. And it's a real obstacle to their thinking, and that has not really, unfortunately, not changed that much. In other parts of Europe, each place has its own problems, but I don't get a sense, and you can see this economically. You don't have anywhere near the level of entrepreneurship and the level of personal initiative that you do in the United States, in spite of its bad education. So first, I'd say there's no good education in the world anyway. I don't buy the Singapore model. I don't buy China. I don't buy Europe. They're all mediocre. The United States is mediocre minus, right? The United States, in some areas, it's damn right awful. It's horrific, the education in the US, in ways that it isn't in overseas. Sort of a complete philosophical revolution. I don't think you're going to get good education. But even then, I still think that in order to figure out what good education is, you need competition. You need private education to compete with one another. You need to be able to experiment and test different models. I don't think we know yet what the ultimate model, what a perfect curriculum looks like, and whether kids learn in different ways, and whether different children might go to different types of schools, whether Montessori can be extended to 3rd or 6th grade or not. Some people think it does. and what we get in the United States today is not competition. Yes, you have a few private schools, but the private schools don't face competition. Rich parents send their kids to one or two private schools that are available in their neighborhood. Everybody else sends their kids to the government school. But imagine a world in which all the schools are constantly competing for their kids. They have to constantly make adjustments to the curriculum. In a world like that, if you encourage competition, parents now care about what service is being delivered to them in terms of the quality of the education. I think, at least in some neighborhoods, in some places now, they evaluate the different schools based on the quality of the education that they're producing, and they move their kids around, and therefore money moves to the schools that are doing a better job in terms of outcome. And even if there's no, systematic philosophical approach to this is a better education, you'll get a better product ultimately. So I think competition is the only way we're going to change things. If we're going to change things and I think that you will see Poland. I mean, Poland's done a phenomenal job in economic growth, but you will see Poland hit a limit to that growth sooner rather than later, because it is not as capitalist as everybody would like to believe. It's still got too many regulations, too many controls, and the educational system is not yet as good as it needs to be. And the only way for it to become as good as it needs to be is through competition, or through a complete philosophical revolution. But I think competition is more likely than a philosophical revolution. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think you need competition in order to bring the best we're capable of in terms of education to the forefront.
I do have one perhaps tangential remark on the Polish economy, which is that I heard the Prime Minister of Poland talk about deregulation, and he said that he eliminated the 30% of the regulation of the EU regulations that he could get away with eliminating without losing EU compensation for adherence to the regulations. He needs the other 70% to keep taxes low, because he's being compensated for compliance with the
EU.
regulations.
But also, if he deregulates beyond what the EU allows, then he's going to have a hard time trading with the rest of the EU, because the EU will start putting sanctions on Polish products because they don't live up to the regulatory standard of the EU. So they're in a bind. They can only go so far without leaving the EU, which I don't think they want to do, because the EU still has enormous benefits for Poland. But, we can hope that this attitude that Poland has is exported to the EU, and maybe the EU starts deregulating at the EU level. That is the one hope for Europe, because Europe's a mess. Europe's a disaster, and Poland's one of the few bright lights within Europe. It's the one economy that's still growing. Germany just shrunk again by this last quarter economically. All right, let's see. Thanks, Adam. Amlan.
Yeah, just a quick question around castle doctrine and trespass. Does maybe not castle doctrine as such, but if you how do you set up a laws that allow for, let me call it, inadvertent trespass? So I give you a specific example. I'm a private pilot, and one of the things we learn is that, okay, if I have an engine failure, a farmer's field is probably the safest place to land.
Yep.
Now, obviously, if there's any damage to crops and all that kind of stuff, loss of use, my insurance company needs to compensate the farmer.
Yep.
But I am trespassing, and does the farmer have the right to come out and shoot me because he says, well, you're on my land and you shouldn't be here?
No, obviously not. I mean, trespass is I mean, there has to be your right to self-defense is contextual, right? And if there's no threat to you, you can't just shoot somebody. And if somebody's on your land by accident, they lost their way, There was an emergency and they have to land, or they crashed their car and the car flew into your field. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, you're obviously liable for the damages, but they can't put you in jail because you trespassed when it was clearly accidental.
Yeah.
And my guess is there's a lot of existing law that's probably pretty good about these things that I don't think we need new law about. There are probably cases where we'd have to write new laws, particularly given that the roads are private. And,
Yeah.
if the roads are private, then you get all kinds of other complexities associated with it. But I think a lot of the trespass laws probably today take all that into account and are probably pretty good.
Okay. So even the states with the, let's say, strong castle doctrine type laws and stuff, they're still pretty good about that stuff. I mean, I like in
I
Canada, we
think
don't have
so.
that.
I mean,
we have the opposite, right? Like the trespasser has the rights and the
yeah,
homeowner doesn't.
I think so. I think
Yeah.
even those now, again, I don't know. I'm not going to vouch for every set of laws, but I think that
Yeah.
I'd say that generally the things that have come up through common law regarding property rights are pretty good.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Yep. All right, Andrew, I think this is the last question we'll take.
Do you think cryptocurrency would exist under capitalism?
You're not talking to me.
Something would exist under capitalism. I don't think it would look the way it looks right now, but look, I think under capitalism you would have digital gold coins, and to keep track of those coins, like they would be redeemable into gold, let's say, or redeemable into something. Blockchain might be a pretty cool way of keeping track and of who owns what and where, and make sure that the claims are all taken care of. Blockchain might have other uses for other kinds of transactions. But you wouldn't have Bitcoin, core Bitcoin, because you wouldn't, money would be, you'd have good money. You would need Bitcoin to solve. There's no problem represented by, let's say, a gold standard, a free banking gold standard, that Bitcoin is there to solve. It doesn't solve any problems. It actually creates more problems than it solves. So to the extent that crypto can, I don't know, tokenize, or it's a way to financialize certain assets, or to raise capital, an easy, simple, quick way to raise capital for certain projects. Yeah, I mean, I think crypto would exist for those kind of things. And it's hard to tell how it would evolve if it's divorced from a function of money, how it would evolve. But I see no reason, qua technology, that it wouldn't evolve and would be a lot better and a lot more useful than it is today. And we don't know how crypto would have evolved even today, because so much regulation was put in its way, right? So the regulatory state blocked the development of crypto, particularly during the Biden administration.
All right, thank you.
To begin with. But I'm not against the technology. I just don't think it's money. But I'm not against the tech that stands at the background and the possibilities of having different types of smart contracts, different ways of identity verification, different, it's a database to a large extent of blockchain, so some more efficient databases, and more secure databases. All that is good stuff. It's just, I think that the delusion that mainly exists around Bitcoin doesn't quite exist the same way around other cryptos. I mean, some cryptos are just crazy, right? I mean, people call them shit coins or whatever coins because they're meaningless. But Bitcoin has created this mythology around it that wouldn't exist. But something like Ethereum, which is probably an actual business, versus Bitcoin, which is not a business, I think would probably exist. All right, guys. Thank you. Have a great rest of your weekend. I will be back. Not sure exactly when. We'll see what the Wi-Fi situation is in Naples, and we'll see when I can get an office in in Florence, but I will be back towards the end of the month, early next month. Have a great weekend and the rest of your week. Bye, everybody.
Take care, Ron.
Good seeing you, Yaron.
Bye. Thanks.